Did you know there are 5 simple fundamentals that will transform your leadership and unlock the performance of your team? I had no idea when I started leading. In fact, I was a disaster. The truth is, I had no idea what I was doing. In fact, I think it went something like this. My supervisor says, if you need something, let me know. It didn't teach me anything, didn't teach me any kind of leadership. It was just, they had more to do than they could do, and they thought they would give me a promotion. The next thing you know, I've got the deep end of the pool facing me. Now, you may have been leading for a long time, and maybe it's not working the way it should. And I think these fundamentals are really going to unlock it for us. I've had the opportunity to work with Major League Baseball and NFL teams, and I can tell you, as a kid, I was playing those same sports. When I got older and got into those locker rooms, the fundamentals had not changed. The fundamentals are really in leadership or any area of life. Think about it. In baseball, it's the ability to hit the field, you play defense, those kind of things. There's some simple fundamentals that work in any of those sports endeavors. But when we think about your business, maybe you're in some kind of product that you sell. Ultimately, it's about customer service. Or if you're in sales, it's about identifying leads and making sure that you're understanding what your customers want and closing those deals. There's some fundamentals in every walk of life. Music, we got chords and scales and tempo. If you don't understand those things, you're never going to be able to master Beethoven or Chopin, whatever you're trying to do. Really, the fundamentals are the on-ramp for mastery in any organization, any team, any endeavor, church, school, whatever you got going on. Those fundamentals matter. We're going to talk about them today. So years ago, I learned that there are some simple fundamentals, as we mentioned, that will help you with your leadership. These fundamentals are what we call the SERVE model. My friend Mark Miller, our partner, basically, he's written about it in a book called Uncommon Greatness, and we've created all kind of resources around that. I want to share those with you today for the point of view on leadership for Chick-fil-A. You may have heard of the restaurant chain, and they were struggling to identify, what do our leaders do? And these fundamentals were the things that came out of that. So let's talk about them today. We call them the SERVE model. Ultimately, I love to think that great leaders serve. They're the ones who are serving an organization or a team. They're not the ones who are self-serving. If we add value to the people around us more than we extract value, we're going to be much more valuable as leaders. But these fundamentals are what give us the ability to serve in the right way. So let's take that word serve and build us a little acronym here that will help us. So the S is the best leaders are able to see the future. Your ability to see the future and take people from where you are to where you want to go. That's where it starts. It's an important part of it. The second piece, the E, is to engage and develop others. We've got to be in a point where we understand the power of engagement. Unfortunately, about 80% of people these days are not engaged. They're not leaned in. We hear quiet quitting and great resignation, all kind of crazy terms. But a lot of times they leave leaders. They don't leave organizations or leave jobs. And sometimes they leave and don't tell us they stay. And so we can't have that. We've got to engage people, and we've got to develop people. This is about our structure. The third thing is we want to reinvent continuously. What got you here probably not going to get you to where you want to go. It has you here. So this reinvent continuously is a fundamental. The V is to value results and relationships. It's important that we have results, but we'll never have results if we forget that we're in the people business and we don't have the right relationships around us. And then the E is to embody a leader's heart. It is about our character. And so let's unpack these a little bit today. Let's think about some historical, maybe some modern day even examples of these, and see if we can't take a step toward embracing these fundamentals and implementing them into our own leadership to make sure that our team really, again, can be unleashed to do its best work. So let's think first about the idea of seeing the future. This is about vision. This is about, can we see where we want to take people? And when you think about your business right now, do you know what you're trying to accomplish? When you think about your team, is everyone locked in on the vision? I think as leaders, so many times it's easy for us to get fuzzy on the vision. We're being successful, things get going real fast. It's almost like driving down the road in a car. If you're going really fast, it's hard to read the signs and you can even miss your exit, right? But if you're really locked in and paying attention, it's pretty easy to stay on track. I think when our business gets going high speed, it's easy to lose the vision. Somebody said one time, vision leaks, and I think that's really true. The owner's job, the leader's job, the coach's job is to make sure that everybody stays locked in on the vision. And I always say if the vision is fuzzy to you, it'll be blurry to the people who are following you. So do you see the future? When you look out at the end of this coming year or the end of the next 3 years or the end of 5 years, where do you want to take your organization? Where do you want to take your team? Can you see the future? This is about vision. Do you engage and develop the people around you? I want to encourage you to think about your structure. Do you have the structure that's going to enable you to go where you're trying to go? So many times leaders get locked in on they have to do everything, and we don't have the people around us, and we don't develop the people around us, and we don't have time to develop them. We think I'll promote them and tell them if you need something, check with me. And that's not the way that we lead appropriately. So we want to make sure that we are locked in on engaging with the people and developing them, helping them to be resourced, to be trained, to be skilled up in every area, to be able to duplicate what we're doing and maybe even take it to the next level. It's so doable, but if we don't pay attention to it, we don't think that develop a mindset, it'll never happen. The R, Reinvent Continuously, this is about change. This is about understanding that if we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. And we want something new, we're going to have to do something new. I always say different is not always better. Think about it. There are some things that you're doing that you don't really need to do differently. I mean, they're working. You should stay locked in on those and do those. But better is always going to be different. If you want something better, it is going to require you to do something different. This Reinvent Continuously mindset is about innovation. It's about change. It's about willing to try things and take things to the next level. I love that mindset. I love those leaders and those organizations who are able to continually improve. It's so impressive when we see that. You can be that kind of leader. The value results in relationships. Here's the reality. You probably have a bias. A couple thousand people were asked, which way does your boss lean, toward results or toward relationships? And less than 1%, less than 20 people said, I'm not sure. I think she's right down the middle, or he's just 50-50. Every single one of them pretty much said, he leans this way or she leans that way. And I think if you begin to think about which way you lean, you'll pretty quickly be able to identify that you have a bias. You either lean toward results. Let's say that you're a person who's interested in getting things done and you've got a checklist and a task list and goals and all that stuff fires you up and motivates you. Or maybe you're a relational person who, what makes people tick and who does what, and are we all getting along? And both are important, but if we don't value both, if we're the leader and we have a bias one way or the other, we don't value both. If we're not careful, we'll surround ourselves with people who think like we think, everybody's the same. And if you have a bunch of relational people, you'll never get anything done if they don't understand the importance of having a goal and having a structure and having a strategy. If you're all a bunch of engineers, I had a group of engineers we met with one time who said, if we don't understand the people side, or we don't value the people side, we'll never be able to accomplish the things and build the things that we're trying to build. So there's this balance. There's a tension going on, and we've got to learn to live in the center of that tension. And then ultimately, we've got to embody a leader's heart. We use a picture of an iceberg when we talk about this. Go with me here for a second. Think about an iceberg. Most of the mass of that iceberg is below the waterline. There's 10% above, but the Titanic didn't sink because of what was above the water. Nobody thought, there's an iceberg, let's run into that. It's what's underneath that sometimes sinks our leadership. And if we don't understand that there are skills, it's important. Can we lead meetings and build teams and solve problems? That above the waterline stuff, got to have that. But if we don't appreciate the fact that it's our character that ultimately begins to implode our leadership, or I would say it this way, it doesn't implode it actually causes our leadership to erode. Character erodes over time. It's not something that we wake up one day and think, I'll just forfeit my character today. We take these small little steps away from where we should be, and the next thing you know, we're struggling and the people around us don't want to follow us. And it's because often we've not forgotten how to lead meetings or build teams or solve problems. We've forgotten to keep our character in check, and our leadership is just not what it needs to be. And we always say, if your heart's not right, nobody really cares about your skills. So we got to embody a leader's heart. Now, let's think about these 5 fundamentals in maybe some real life situations. So let's go back to see the future. Was there anybody who saw the future that in your world, who saw the future in you, who gave you a chance, who pushed you toward an opportunity? I think about sometimes some stories around this where people have had vision before. We hear the story of President Kennedy, who said, let's put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, back in the 1960s. And there was vision behind that. We hear stories of Walt Disney. There's a great story about him where Walt Disney World was built. But why did he need to build that? I mean, I started thinking about this. Why did he need to build Walt Disney World? He had a cartoon character and he had plenty of movies and all kind of things, but I think he kept saying, what else could we do? I love that question. What else could we do? And as you begin to think about your own leadership, can you think like Disney thought? He didn't have to build Walt Disney World. I mean, I think they already had Walt Disneyland when Walt Disney World was built. And yet his vision was to build a swamp theme park on a swamp, basically in Florida. They bought all that land up and said, can we build a theme park here for families to come and enjoy themselves and all these rides? And if you've been to Disney, it's a lot of fun. But Walt understood the business model of that too. There's a gift shop at the end of every ride, right? And it's really expensive for the fast pass. I mean, if you go to Disney World, you're going to drop some cash, and that whole thing was thought through at a business standpoint. But the interesting story around that was Disney World opened. The story goes that Walt was not there. He had died 3 or 4 years before it opened. His wife Lillian is there though, and Lillian, on that day that it opened, some reporter sticks a microphone in her face and says, "Don't you wish Walt were here to see this?" And she doesn't miss a beat. She says, "Walt did see this. That's why it's here." Walt had vision, right? Walt could see the future. When you think about your business, when you think about what you're trying to do, you think about your team, what else could you do? It's not enough to have a cartoon character or a movie. We can build a theme park mindset. That same thing can be true for you. You may have had a team and you may have won your region. Is it possible that you could double down on your fundamentals and the things that you're trying to do, and your talent could take you to win the state championship? I don't know. You get to think about this. When you think about your students, what is it that they can become? Do you see it? If you can see the future, I think you can take people there. But if you can't see it, you're going to have a hard time. When we think about engaging and developing others, one of the things that comes to mind for me is a stonemason. I've read stories about how they have an apprentice, and it takes years to become a stonemason, but they're trained day after day after day doing the menial jobs. We had a remodel just a few weeks ago. We did something at our home, and there's a guy who's just doing unbelievable tile work. And I said, "How did you get started with this?" And he's not that old. I mean, he'd been doing it, he said, about 15 years. And I said, "Are you serious? You don't even look that old." And he said, "I started when I was 12. I said, what were you doing?" He said, "I just would sweep up trash, and I would pick up stuff, and I would carry stuff around, and I would make like $20 in a whole day." He said, "I thought it was like hit the lottery." It was crazy how much money that felt like as a 12-year-old. He said, "I just kept practicing and practicing." When I was 17, I got my own first little crew. And now he's got crews of people that are laying tile and stone. And it's incredible that he has learned by being an apprentice, but now he's a master tile guy. When I think about it, I mean, these stonemasons that are masters, they build cathedrals around the world. It's pretty crazy. When you look at the people in your organization, what are you doing to develop them? Are you helping them go to the next level? You might ask yourself, who is it that I could develop? Who could I invest in that could take over some of the things I'm doing? I think the question here for me is, what is it that I'm doing that somebody else could do? And if you ask yourself that question, you begin to transfer some of that. I think you got a really great shot of building a structure that'll help you scale what you're doing. Really, this is about scale, right? When we think about reinventing continuously, there's so many organizations that have done that. I think about technology companies. Think about some of the things that we're able to do now with video and audio and all kind of stuff. None of that existed years ago. I mean, there weren't even any phones, much less computers and all kind of stuff that we have now that we can actually reach stuff around the world. I mean, this video is going to go around the world just like that because of people who had technology at the forefront of what they were doing. They thought, how can we take this to the next level? How can we maximize this? How can we make it better? And we live in a world today where that's happening constantly in the technology world, but I think it can happen in our world as well. You see stadiums that are continually being built and improved for the fan experience. So let's break that down a little bit for you in your world. When you think about what it is you're doing, the enterprise you're involved in, are you doing things based on what your customers want and what's going to make it better for them? I always say the audience is the hero. We create our content and we create our products and our services and everything that we're doing. If we create it with the user in mind, it's actually going to make it better for us on the back end. I mean, people will love that, and they're going to be fans of yours if you can really create it that way. So I think when you think about reinventing continuously, it's easy to think about technology and change and innovation and all those things. What are you doing to innovate? What are you doing to change? What are you doing to get better? You'll value that. I think that's huge. Speaking of valuing results in relationships. Again, we mentioned that bias. I think about a couple of my daughters. We've got 4 daughters, and they're really all kind of lean one way or the other. But I think about a couple of them. One of them leans really heavily toward results, and then one of them heavily leans toward relationships. And yet, when I look at both of them, they value the other side. They do a really good job of that. In fact, our daughter who values relationships so much, she threw herself a surprise party for her birthday, which I thought was kind of illegal. I didn't know you can do that. You're having a surprise party for who? It's for me, she said, and not me, like for her. And she's like, we're going to do a talent show and everybody's going to come. She's got introverts doing talent at the show. It was really cool. And yet she understands the value of results as well. She's making sure that that some of the things that she needs to value, she's starting businesses and all kind of stuff going on. I'm like, understanding the value of both is so important. And yet as a dad, I lean one of those ways, and I've got to try to relate to both sides. And yet, have you thought about it in your business? Have you thought about it with your team? When you look around your table, which way do they lean? First of all, which way do you lean? Do you lean toward results? If so, make sure you've got some relational people around your table. Maybe even invite them to your meeting and say, how does this make you feel if we do this? It's so easy to just, like, I'm in charge, this is what we're going to do. And yet if we begin to ask people, how's this going to land with you? Or if you have a relational bias and you are really struggling to make progress, you might pull somebody in and say, help me with some strategy thinking here. Go find a results person who can help you set some goals and create that strategy that's going to take you where you need to go. There's going to be tension here in this idea, but if you will lean into that, I think you've got a good chance to make it better. And then to embody a leader's heart, we talked about this character side of our leadership. And I'll just remind you again, if your heart's not right, nobody cares about your skills. There is a weightiness to your character that's going to enable you to become a leader that others want to follow. Not that they have to follow, but they want to follow. And I know people that are leaders. I mean, I've been around them before. I've followed them before. I would run through a wall from them, but it's always the ones who have high character. They believe in me, or they're loyal, they share, they have integrity, all those things that are really important. They're teachable, they're coachable, they're positive. We can make a list of things that would be high character stuff. We embody a leader's heart. We're going to have a team that's going to be galvanized, and they're going to be loyal to what we're trying to do. So let me give you some questions here. I wrote some questions down I think will help us. Let's go back to our 5 fundamentals here. Let's start with see the future. And I love Disney's question, what else could we do? What else could we do? Now, if you're not even sure what you're doing, let's back it up even another notch and say, what are we trying to do? If you don't know what you're trying to do, or if it's become fuzzy to you, as we said, it's become blurry to everybody else, right? So let's make sure we're locked in on what we're trying to do. But if we're doing some stuff, what else could we do? I love that question. The second question for the engage and develop others, who could help? The bottleneck of what's going on here, if I'm not careful, I can, just like vision can become fuzzy, I can become the bottleneck for what's going on and think that every decision has to come through me. I've got to touch everything. We don't want to be like a quarterback where you have to touch the ball on every play. We want to create a coach model here, or a player coach model. You're going to still be involved some, but you want to make sure that you are overseeing what's going on and you're able to lead multiple teams if you're going to scale what it is you're trying to do. So this is about who's going to be able to help you. And I would encourage you again to identify what it is that you can do, that only you can do, and then begin to identify some people around you who can do some of the other things that you're doing, develop them, and then delegate and let that happen, and ultimately encourage them to begin to develop other people as well. And now you do have an organization of scale, which is pretty cool when you have that going on. Reinvent continuously. What do we need to do differently? I love that question. What do we need to do differently? What is it that we're doing that we need to change? Is there something that's holding us back? If we're not willing to innovate and change and go for something new, we're never going to get to where we want to go doing what we do. Better, again, is always going to be different. What do we need to do differently? And then when we come to this idea of valuing results in relationships, again, let's review that one. Some of us lean toward results, some of us lean toward relationships. The question I have for you there is, do you know your bias, and have you compensated for your bias? Do you need to take a step here? Do you know the bias of everybody around your table? And it may be that you're trying to do something in a results way with a bunch of relational people, and you haven't really thought about how this, again, lands with them or how it makes them feel. And the goal is not really to get to the top of the mountain. The goal is to get to the top of the mountain together. If you get to the top and there's nobody with you, I'm not sure you've done really much more than climb a mountain. So let's make sure that we're taking our organizations and our teams together to the top. I think that's so amazing. And then ultimately, the last question I would ask you on Embody a Leader's Heart is, how's your heart? Somebody asked me one time, how's your heart? And I'm not talking about your cardiovascular heart. Another episode there. I'm talking about, how's your leadership heart? Are you leading with the right heart? If we're not careful, let's go back to what we said earlier. We can be self-serving leaders, not leaders who serve others. I think the best leaders are servant leaders. There's an old Bible verse that says, above all else, guard your heart. That's where your life comes from. I would say guard your heart, because that's where your leadership comes from too. If your heart's not right, again, nobody gives a rip about your skills. So let's make sure we're locked in on those. So I love these 5 fundamentals. They are the on-ramp for mastery. If you're going to pursue mastery, let's think about that piano player that's going to try to play Mozart. You're not going to be able to do it if you don't understand the scales, the chords, the tempo, as we said earlier. Same way as a leader, if you're going to be a master leader, you got to be able to see the future. You got to be able to engage and develop others. You got to reinvent continuously, value results and relationships, and then embody a leader's heart. These 5 fundamentals are simple, mind-blowingly simple if you want to think about it. I mean, it's just how much more simple could it be? And yet, if you'll do these things, they really will transform your leadership. They'll unlock the potential of your team. You can go to the next level. It'll be incredible what will happen. But if you bypass those and you don't understand those, you shouldn't be surprised that you're struggling. And maybe you need just a refresher on this. Let's go back to these fundamentals. It's crazy how blocking and tackling, they still unlock the ability to win. If you're on a football field, these 5 fundamentals of leadership will unlock the same potential in you. If you need us, reach out, leadeveryday.com. If you want to get a copy of Mark's book, Uncommon Greatness, or the Field Guide or Quick Start Guide that we wrote, you can go to leadeveryday.com. We can help you in your organization. Don't hesitate to reach out. We love you guys. Remember, the best leaders really do lead every day.